Hey there, it's Andre, the Impulsive Thinker. Today I've got Marley Boyle back from Sleepworks. You'll remember Marley, we talked about sleep a few episodes ago, and she's a registered respiratory therapist, a sleep consultant, and a coach, and the co-founder of Sleepworks. She's also certified in clinical sleep health, and she joins us again to discuss ADHD and sleep, but more specifically, things I want to know more about. So Marley, thank you for coming back.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk more about sleep and ADHD.
Yeah, and so me and my factor now, I want to go a little bit deeper in more details here because we the last time we talked, we really it was I would say it was a good covering general conversation and general idea of how ADHD affects sleep. And I'm not too sure if we ended up talking this on the podcast or was this post recording, but we started getting conversation about a little more about sleep phases and circadian rhythm. And if you go on the internet, wow, there is nothing consistent about those two stages. So with your knowledge and your experience, I just want to let's talk more about the circadian rhythm and the sleep phases, like you were mentioning before, and why it's important.
Sure. So, circadian rhythm and the actual sleep stages, or what we call sleep architecture, are two different things. So, our circadian rhythm is basically the clock in which our body runs by. So, the master clock, and it mimics the rise and the fall of the sun, and it runs about a 24-hour period. So, circadian rhythm controls many different processes in our body. So, things like our digestion when we're hungry, our hormone release, when we have energy, when we fall asleep, when we feel awake, those kind of things. And that is basically controlled by the rise and the fall of the sun, or light and darkness is the biggest influencing factor on.
Okay. Yep.
And then there's the sleep stages. So now there's four accepted sleep stages. So we have stage one, which is falling asleep, really, really light sleep. If somebody whispered your name when you're in stage one sleep, you'd hear them and not even recognize you've fallen asleep yet. Then we go into stage two sleep, which we spend about 50% of the night in stage two. So, stage two, we're physically at rest and our body is really starting to slow down and prepare for deep sleep. So, our body does go through some restoration in stage two, but then we get into our deep sleep stage. And the first time we go through a sleep cycle, so we'll go approximately through about 5 a night if you're getting the recommended amount of sleep. You go
Right.
through about 5 sleep cycles.
And that follows a 90-minute cycle,
Approximately.
approximately, give
Yep,
or take.
approximately. So the first time we go through a first sleep cycle at the beginning of the night and we get into deep sleep, that's actually the longest stage of deep sleep that we're going to get throughout the night. So we have tons of deep sleep. And then every time we go through that sleep cycle after that, that stage gets progressively shorter and shorter because our bodies become more rested.
Right.
Deep sleep is responsible for physical repair. So it's when about 70% of our total body's growth hormone, which is responsible for repairing our body at a cellular level, that's when that's released. So a lot
Okay.
of healing takes place. If you're feeling physically fatigued, you're probably not getting enough deep sleep. Deep sleep's also the stage that's most impacted by blue light and screens and things like that.
Okay.
Yep. It's great for our memory and our body to repair. Then we get into REM sleep, so rapid eye movement sleep. And this is the one where we do the bulk of our dreaming. Now, at the beginning of the night, we only get a little bit of REM sleep. So it works opposite to deep sleep. We'll just get a tiny bit of REM sleep. And then every time we cycle through our sleep cycle after that, that stage will get progressively longer and longer until our last stage of REM should be approximately an hour right before we wake up in the
Okay.
morning. So REM sleep is what's responsible for our executive functioning, our memory consolidation, learning, emotional regulation, some of those functions for us. And so those are the four stages of sleep, and the timing of those depends on their circadian rhythm. So they work independently, but also together. They are separate things.
Okay. Um, and so they're related. So
Yep,
your sleep phase is related to or dependent on the circadian rhythm. Is that a fair statement?
absolutely.
And are there different rhythms for circadian rhythm from person to person, or is it pretty much standard with everyone else?
Nope, there are different rhythms and they're influenced by, lifestyle factors and even our genetics. So those would be called chronotypes. So chronotypes
Oh, yeah.
are where we're more likely to our circadian rhythm will sit. So are we going to fall asleep early in the evening and wake up early in the morning? Are we night owls, going to stay up later, sleep in later? And that's more of the timing of our circadian rhythm. And that's dictated by our chronotype from a genetic perspective, and then it's also influenced from lifestyle. So if we have to get up for work by 7 o'clock in the morning, if we're a night owl, but we have to get up for work for the next 10 years at 7 a.m., we're going to influence that chronotype to be more of a morning person, or make it easier so we can kind of conform to that 8 to 5 schedule.
Okay. And so if I'm a night owl and I'm forcing myself to wake up early in the morning, so that means forcing forcing a circadian rhythm against our chronotype.
Yep.
How is that good? What influences, like what can happen with that?
So there is certainly some detriments to the quality of your sleep when we don't align our actual sleep time with when our body wants us to sleep.
Right.
So if you have the luxury of, being an entrepreneur and picking your own schedule some days, being able to sleep as a night owl, so go to bed late and sleep in late, you'll probably have a better quality sleep for yourself if that's when your body wants you to sleep. But unfortunately, a lot of people have to sleep against what their chronotype wants. So there certainly is some deficits there with sleep quality, a little more difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, those kind of things when we're not
Mhm.
lining up our chronotype and our actual sleep times.
And so I've heard this term, I think you mentioned it before, deep sleep phase. No, I got it. Where'd that go? Delayed sleep
Yes.
phases. Is this what we're kind of talking about now, or is this a different condition or situation?
So chronotype, being a night owl, is your chronotype. So a kind of a predisposition to tending to, some people will describe it as like, I come alive at night. That's when I
Right.
feel the most awake. Delayed sleep phase syndrome is actually a sleep disorder. So it's beyond just a night owl. It's the entire circadian rhythm has been shifted. They can't eat before noon. They're walking zombies until noon, that kind of thing. Feel really, really tired. And the whole circadian rhythm gets shifted later and later. And that becomes a bit of a disorder compared to a night owl.
So this is actually saying like we've shifted the circadian rhythm so much that it's almost like it thinks it's normal there, but it actually isn't.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So
And
it's a genetic mutation that causes delayed sleep phase. So it's not just behavioral, it's from early childhood. These are the kids that have, their parents are dressing them in the morning to go to school, trying to force
right.
them to eat breakfast. They hate eating breakfast in the morning. They're falling asleep on the school bus on the way to school. So it's less behavioral impact. It's a um, genetic mutation that actually causes delayed sleep phase as a
Okay. And can you have therapy or changing
Mhm.
your sleep cycles to correct this, or is this a
Yeah.
problem to have all the time?
So similar to how we would treat a night owl to make their life easier so they can conform to that 9 to 5 schedule, the same treatments apply for delayed sleep phase. So bright light therapy. So we
Right.
use bright light therapy lamps, often used in seasonal affective disorder, to shift that circadian rhythm to make it easier for them to wake up earlier and go to bed earlier. We can also use melatonin because melatonin is a hormone that controls our circadian rhythm, controls the timing of our sleep.
Right.
Even though it is marketed as a sleeping aid, it doesn't really help us sleep. It changes the timing of our sleep.
So so is this something that too with time, if I'm a night owl, let's say, but I'm forcing myself to wake up early in the morning for say, I don't know, 40 years, can that get into a condition of the light sleep phase or just constant fatigue?
So what can happen if you're, a natural night owl and maybe you're forcing yourself to wake up early is you're going to end up with probably a sleep deficit. So people that are natural night owls that have to wake up early have a hard time falling asleep at night. So they're going to bed later and later or taking longer to fall asleep. And then they're not getting the adequate amount of sleep before that alarm goes off early in the morning for them to go to work. So we often see a sleep deficit there, unless we use the tools to shift the circadian rhythm earlier using light and some behavioral issues
Okay.
to help you fall asleep earlier as well.
So can the circadian rhythm be trained, or was it going to follow your natural course of your body?
So it can be trained. It can be influenced by, so waking up at the same time every single day, getting light exposure at the same time every day, eating first thing in the morning, raising our body temperature through cardiovascular exercise. All of those can be endogenous signals to our master clock. Oh, okay, I'm
Hmm.
supposed to be awake now. And that's going to train it. But if our natural chronotype is night owl, when we stop doing all of those lifestyle things, our body is just going to revert right back to that night owl
So it's
behavior.
a natural tendency that our bodies, like we
Like,
got one rhythm, that's
yeah,
it. So we can cheat it
we can
or
cheat it,
hack
but we can't
it,
change
but we
it.
can't change it. I don't know. I was raised to think we can change it, but we've got a natural rhythm.
It's innate.
It's
Yes.
innate. It's there. It's innate, and either we work with it or if we're forced to have to deal with it. So you said a few things earlier that kind of hit me because you said, the kids that won't eat breakfast in the morning, they sleep on the bus. Well, I've never could eat breakfast unless I've been awake for at least 2 hours. If not,
Okay.
it made me sick.
Yep.
Thinking back, yeah, I always slept on the bus. I just
Yep.
thought I stood up too was up too late the night before. So are these kind of like when you said those two things, why are you saying that that could be a chronotype issue? Like, why would I not want to eat breakfast in the morning when I'm supposed to, as per the pie chart?
Right. Great question. So that's because all of our other processes in our body are also on that circadian rhythm and also delayed. So our digestive, when you wake up and can't eat breakfast, it's because your digestive system hasn't woken up yet either. So it's
Oh,
the same clock. It still wants to be sleeping and not digesting food. And then if we force breakfast down, that's why we feel so nauseous in the morning when you're a natural night owl that doesn't enjoy eating breakfast. You don't wake up hungry.
so it's not just our brain that's asleep, it's our whole body.
Our body,
So
yes.
I can be awake cognitively with my brain, but my rest of my body is not there yet.
It's not there yet. So a lot of people feel like a bit of sleep inertia. They feel like they don't remember their mornings.
Right.
Clearly, a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
people
Yeah.
drive to work and they're like, I don't remember my drive to work
Yep.
at all. And
Uh,
that's,
I
we're
know
not.
you're, yeah, I know you're not certified nutritionist or a weight person, but what hit me was if my body's not awake yet, my digestive saying that I'm on a sleep still. And what I learned with time was if I eat too late at night, my body says I don't need this energy because you're going to sleep soon, so you're going to go straight to fat. So if we're kind of off our sleep phase, could that also affect our weight gain and loss?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest factors, which is funny that you've made this connection, one of the biggest factors of misalignment of your circadian rhythm, and we see this with shift workers and all sorts of
Yeah.
different problems, is the risk for obesity and weight gain. So, and diabetes as well. So what happens?
Check, check, check. Yeah, keep going.
So it throws us off in a couple of different ways. Sleep deprivation in general, or when our sleep's not aligned with our circadian rhythm that controls digestion and metabolism.
Hmm.
We have two hormones that control how hungry we feel and how full we feel. One's called leptin, one's called ghrelin.
Right.
Ghrelin makes us feel hungry, leptin makes us feel full. They work opposite when our sleep is poor and misaligned.
Right.
So we're going to feel hungry more, full less. On top of that, our metabolism slows. So when our bodies
Right.
we're consuming things, our body's saying store it.
Yeah. And you're saying Grenlin, Grenlin.
Ghrelin.
All right, not
Ghrelin.
gremlin, not like the
Yeah.
little furry animals. Okay. All right. This is really interesting here because I circle here. I want to get back to sleep deficits, but I want to go along this like this chronotype thing is really interesting. Can you just name some all right. So we talked about who might maybe a night owl. What are some people who are actually getting up later in the day, but are actually early morning people like the no breakfast, sleep on the bus. That's a night owl chronotype forcing to wake up. What about someone who's forced to or has to wake up later, but should be waking up earlier? What kind of indicators can give an idea of that your sleep phase might be off?
So these are people that want to wake up early and are sleeping later.
Correct. Yeah.
So I don't see that very often in my practice. Typically early risers tend to be good sleepers. And
Well, it
that's
follows the norm and the schedule of society, I guess.
absolutely does.
Right. Okay.
Yep. So less of a problem with a morning chronotype. We see less problems with depression, all the things that
Right.
come from sleep
I
deprivation.
guess fatigue also could add to mental health.
You
And
got
well, you said mood issues earlier, so that can get into
it.
depression, anxiety, because well, if our executive functioning and our emotional regulation is tired,
That's right. You
yeah,
got
it's
it.
all a full bucket and you can't do much more. Um, about another thing you told me, you asked me a while ago too, we are talking offline, is if I fell back asleep, did I sleep better or dream? And actually, I've been thinking a lot about that. Typically, yes, if I fall back asleep, I feel worse. But if I wake up, fall asleep later, I do feel a deeper sleep, hard sleep, and I do feel rested. But after my initial sleep, what does that say to you?
After your initial sleep. So if
Yeah,
you're feeling rested after you go to bed later, that initial sleep, that's you're sleeping with your chronotype, which is great.
right.
You're aligning that. Now waking up early and then being awake for a little while and then falling back to sleep and then waking up with some sleep inertia or feeling more groggy, that can happen when we're not regularly getting adequate amounts of sleep.
Right.
So what happens when we fall asleep, we wake up. Okay, initially you probably woke up from REM sleep, so you woke up at the top of your sleep cycle, you feel refreshed. That's normal. That's great. But if you've missed out on maybe an extra hour of sleep, so maybe or 2 hours or 90 minutes of a full sleep cycle, and you fall back to sleep, your brain will prioritize getting deep sleep or getting REM sleep to catch up. So it kind of says, well, you don't really need any more stage 1 and stage 2. You haven't got enough sleep. Let's prioritize deeper sleep right now. And so when you wake up from your second sleep, you're likely waking up from deep sleep, which is going to lead to
Okay.
2 hours of sleep inertia, which can impair our ability to like function and feel well for hours after we wake up. And it's basically our body giving us a signal like, I needed actually a little bit more of this sleep.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very interesting because I've yeah, sometimes that makes sense. If it's a deep sleep, then that you said that was that's physical repair.
You got it. Yep.
So thinking back, I think you're right. It was more of a physical rest than I got then. Okay, and that makes sense to me. Let's go into sleep deficits. I know the listeners here, everyone here for a while is just like, no sleep, go, go, go. I'm really good at 2-3 hours of sleep 5 times, a week. You mentioned the word sleep deficit. I want to go in a little more detail on that, what that means, what are the implications, and what do we believe is incorrect about sleep deficit?
Okay. So sleep deficit for an adult is actually considered if you're getting regularly less than 7 hours of sleep. So the recommended guidelines for adults for sleep is 7 to 9 hours nightly.
Mhm.
Anything less than 7 hours, you're starting to accumulate a bit of a sleep debt. If it's short term that you're getting less than 7 hours, you don't really accumulate a sleep debt because your brain is capable of rebounding and catching up on just a little bit of sleep loss or short term
Right.
sleep loss. We more see a sleep deficit in long term sleep patterns. So, long term sleep habits of obtaining less than the minimum of 7 hours per night.
Okay. And what effects can it have if you have too much sleep deficit?
Okay, great. So starting cognitively, we see a huge decline in executive functioning. We do see increased risks for mood disorders and mental health problems. Then there's the long-term effects that have recently been shown as it also puts us at a much higher risk for developing Alzheimer's. So one of the processes that happens during deep sleep is our glymphatic system. It's like a sewer system for our brain,
Right.
basically opens up the channels, cerebral spinal fluid, flushes out all the plaques and byproducts that are associated with Alzheimer's disease. They've shown now that we're not regularly going through that process. It causes plaque buildup, which puts us at a higher risk for dementias.
Wow.
So
So
that's my
like,
brain.
sorry?
That's just the brain.
Oh, that's just the brain. So before you get more about the body part, which I do want to talk about, but you mentioned about how the sleep deficit short term is basically what I got out of it just amplifies a lot of our ADHD symptoms.
Absolutely.
executive function, emotional regulation, and you had a third one I can't really remember because I couldn't write that quick enough.
It
But
exacerbates all those
yeah,
symptoms.
okay, perfect. Now the physicalities of sleep deficit.
So the physical part, starting with the heart. So we can develop heart disease from lack of sleep. So when we get into that, again, stage 3 sleep, where that growth hormone comes into play, that's actually responsible for repairing all the little cracks and things in our arteries that plaques can stick to.
Right.
Make it nice and smooth. Well, when we're not regularly going through that process, the inside of our arteries are a little more rough and easily, plaques can easily stick to them. So we're looking at more heart disease, high blood pressure, from a cardiovascular perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Lack of sleep also puts us at risk for cerebrovascular events, so strokes as well. More of the recent research has shown more leaning towards, and this is a lot to do with sleep deprivation and as far as like sleep apnea and things like that.
Right.
The risk of cancer is higher now, and they're showing different sleep disorders that lead to different types of cancer. So for shift workers, we're seeing an increased rise in breast cancer and colorectal cancers.
Mm-hmm.
For people with sleep apnea, we're seeing more malignant cancers pop up, things like that. And again, it has to do with that restoration that our body needs to go through on a regular basis. So lots and lots of health risks because sleep is foundational. We don't have a big emphasis in our healthcare system on sleep because they didn't know why we slept for a long time. And they're still continuing to research and find out more reasons why we sleep. And it's foundational. Spend a third of our lives doing it.
Well, that too. And then the other thing too is society, the way we were raised, the more hours you work, the more successful you are as an entrepreneur. So we sacrifice the sleep. And if the less you slept is like bragging. Oh, I only need 4 or 5. Yeah, badge of honor. And
badge
it's crap.
of honor.
It's
Sleep
crap.
when I'm dead.
Yeah.
And that old adage, I'll sleep when I'm dead, can come true a lot faster than we
realize. It can come a lot faster. So the 4 stages of sleep, you had the 1 and 2 was the light sleep. You didn't really give a name for stage 2, just that it was 50% of the rest.
Yeah, so it's just called stage 2 sleep.
It's
That's
just
the actual fancy
2.
name.
All right. So we got light sleep, stage 2, deep sleep, which is stage 3. What percentage of the sleep should that be?
About 20 to 25%. Okay. And that's also referred to as our beauty sleep. So when someone says, oh, I haven't got my beauty sleep, that's stage 3 sleep as well. Oh. And that's because without stage 3, we wear it on our faces. We see the dark circles under our eyes.
All right. So I know where I need to work now. Thanks. And then I guess that leaves it 20 to 25% again for the REM sleep.
You got it. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I even did that without a calculator. My old engineering training did not come through.
Impressive.
Okay. So perfect. Wow. So sleep deficit, delayed sleep phases is a disorder. Chronotypes is a very interesting thing for me. Is there a third chronotype? We got our late people, our early people, and we'll have people in the middle of the day.
Yep, you have intermediate people. So sometimes they're called third birds because they do night owls, morning larks, and then the intermediate is referred to as.
And I think there's a lot more people out there than we realize. And I know some shift workers, I got one buddy actually prefers that middle of the day, sleep till noon, go to work, get home at midnight. It just works for him. He's happy. And
people with a later chronotype do better in shift work. We see less of the health problems when people, because sleeping in the daytime can be such a challenge.
Right.
Light and heat and noise, that if you do have a natural tendency to be able to sleep in late, people that do that do better with shift work. So there's some employment implications with that as well.
Right. Cool. Well, we can go on a lot more. We're running out of time here, but the one thing I do want to touch on quickly, because we've heard this, is revenge sleep. And how does that screw up our sleep patterns? Because that's a big thing with ADHD. And I never realized until once I heard the term, I knew exactly what they're talking about. Yep. And I fight that every night now to try to not to do that revenge sleep, like, go to bed no matter what, even if I didn't get to do my full calm down or what I wanted to. A lot of times I plan to do something and I can get done, I'm still going to do it.
Yes, exactly. So it's revenge bedtime procrastination.
That's the term. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I totally knew what you meant though. And it is a counterproductive stress management technique. And it is bad for most people, but when you have ADHD and you already have a tendency to procrastinate, it doesn't seem to be a lot worse. And then add a night owl chronotype on top of that. And it does take some real effort to get yourself to bed at a reasonable hour.
Right. Yeah. So that'll amplify itself on it. Now, I just
Absolutely.
want to challenge you the term like ADHD, we procrastinate a lot.
Mhm.
It's just that in this case, for this revenge bedtime procrastination, what I found is I didn't get enough of my transition calm down time. I didn't actually get to read my books, or I plan to do this, this, and that, and I can't let it go.
Yep.
So
That
it's
is
not
part of
that I'm
it.
procrastinating per se, but it's just there's something else tied to it.
It's again, it's that stress management technique because
Right.
you get enough of me time during the day. So when we don't
Yes.
have enough control for our own time during the day, then we're going to steal it from our sleep time to build that
Mhm.
in, right? I didn't get enough time to relax or have
Yeah.
fun or accomplish enough today. So I'm going to steal it from my sleep time, even though that behavior is going to lead to possibly the next day being a little less productive, a little more dysfunctional, those kind of things. So it's actually cognitively being, and I always use this, and it's, it's kind of a bit of a buzzword, but mindfulness in as a practice, because if you're aware of the consequences the next day, it's a little easier to go through that decision tree. Should I go to bed? Also, setting alarms and notifications for preparing for bedtime can be a huge tool to help with bedtime procrastination, because if we're staying awake to complete some of the things that we didn't get done during the daytime, but we know that it's going to bleed into the next day and maybe turn into a bad cycle, we can, cognitively assess that ourselves and say, okay, you know what, I can continue this. I can complete this in the morning or
Yeah.
tomorrow evening.
Actually, that's a good point, because Apple came up with something on my phone and says, well, what time do you want to go to bed? And what time do you want to be reminded? And I'm like, what? I said, okay, whatever. I put it, and I said, whatever. But when that ding dongs, Apple actually does the nighttime thingy. But anyways, it's like, yeah, that does wake me up to say, hey, you got to go to bed soon. And
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
really, and it's very passive. It's just, and you're right. Oh, no, not tonight. Oh,
Yep.
yeah, you know what? I should, or make a decision ever. But it's just a simple little thing like that. Sounds silly and stupid,
Yep.
dumb when you first do it, but you got to try these. If you think it's dumb, try it anyway so you can say it is, and you're not a hypocrite. But
That's
yeah,
right.
so what you're saying, like little reminders like that does help to initiate the cognitive decision tree.
Absolutely. It gives you that pause of like to reassess. Should I be
Pause
packing
to
stuff
reassess.
up?
I like that. Nice. See, you wonder why I brought her back, eh? You guys, I know you guys learned a lot today, and I sure as hell did. So, um, would love to continue on, but my attention span is starting to wane out here on my end. But either way, I brought you back to learn more, and I learned a lot more. And circadian rhythms are internal clock, which is innate. We can trick it or
Train it.
tease it to work slightly, but in the end, we're going to default back to the natural course. Chronotypes, I think you should identify yourself which chronotype you are. Um, early morning person, night owl, or the intermediate. And once you understand that, I'm still not too sure when, because that's another conversation where I think I've trained myself so much that I wake up at 4:35 no matter what. But I wonder if I am a night owl. And the sleep deficits is actually can amplify ADHD symptoms in the short term, but has long-term health effects, not only mentally, but also physically. And we should be cognizant of the deficits, because technically, if I recall what you said earlier or another time, was that we can make up some sleep if it was in the last day or so, but anything longer than that, there's no such thing as making up sleep.
You got it.
Wow.
You.
So, well, this is fantastic. Thanks again, Marley. Any final thoughts for the listeners?
I think that's everything. Thank you so much for having me back. I loved having this conversation.
Yeah, and please go to her website, www.sleepworks.ca or .com.
.com, and it's
Oh,
sleep-works.com.
sleep-works. I got to update my notes here. So for you, the listener, it's important to learn and understand your circadian rhythm in order to get great quality of sleep. Note, I used the term, actually, I didn't use the term. Marley used the term, quality of sleep is the most important thing. And that dreaming is a good sign of quality sleep.
You got it.
And what's your sleep pattern and rhythm? Let me know. Be great to hear from you. Thanks again, Marley.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you guys later. And thanks for listening.